So you've just booked your wedding venue and now it's time to book your photographer. And with so many different options out there, you don't really know where to start, what to ask and how much to spend. And in today's video, we're going to go through some of the pitfalls that people fall into, some of the things that they don't ask that they should have done. And we're just going to make sure that when you're booking your photographer, you know what to ask them, you know what to look for. I'm just going to educate people on making sure that they don't make the same mistakes that others have made in the past. So let's get into it. So one of the biggest deciding factors when you're booking a photographer, it's probably going to be cost and how much you spend on one. Now, you can get budget photographers for under 800 and you can get top end for over 2,000. I've seen people disappointed at both sides of the scale when they've spent 3,000 or when they spent 500. And a lot of it is because the expectations didn't match or they didn't do the homework correctly. Now, this is the kind of where this video will help you because it'll make sure that you're checking the right thing. So if you're going to spend £3,000 on a photographer, then we'll go through some of the things that you do need to be asking them just to make sure that you are covered. So the second thing you're going to look for when you're booking a photographer is probably style. Now, style is made up of two things, editing and persona. And I think persona is the one that's missed a lot, but let's look at editing. Now, editing is how the colors are manipulated on the pictures to bring them into the photographer's style. Now, if you go into a photographer's website and you see the photos and you think, wow, I love the editing, that's good. But there's just one pitfall to look out for. If the photographer heavily edits the photos, you need to be careful that it doesn't turn blue dresses green or red flowers blue, for example. And this is one of the pitfalls that people miss because they don't really appreciate what the before was like of the photos that they're looking at on the website. So some photographers take out a lot of color, some photographers add color, and make sure you kind of say to them, look, we've got orange dresses. We want them to still look orange afterwards. So I'm just going to show you on screen now an example. So you can see here the bridesmaid dresses, what color they were before and what color they were after. And you can see how I always try and make sure that I retain the colors as best as possible while still giving them a nice balanced edit. So make sure you kind of do your homework on this because I do see people afterwards kind of like, oh, the photographer's made all our, dresses different colors, and the photographer will just reply with, look, that's my style. One good way to check this is to maybe ask them for a before and after so you can really see in detail what the kind of manipulation to colours were, especially if colours are important to you. Now, the second thing to cover is persona. Now, persona is how the photographer is on the day in terms of what are they like. For me, I'm fun, documentary, candid. So they're the three kind of pillars of my foundation. So I like to be candid in terms of getting all the reactions, documentary is in documenting the day and all the different components of it, but also a bit fun. So rather than just sat back waiting for things to happen, I go out and make things happen. So I have like when the bridesmaids and the grooms are a bit drunk later, we'll kind of do a bit of fun stuff later, champagne sprays, throwing the groom in the air, just something that kind of echoes their personalities. Now, this is great if that's the sort of photography you're looking for, but you may be looking for something a lot more flat. You're not kind of that sort of person. You don't want a photographer that's going to start dragging you out to do stuff like this when it's just not you. So this is where persona comes into it. So we've covered a couple of the kind of budget and style, but I just want to look at some of the things that you need to be checking when you're booking a photographer. And these are some of the things that you need to ask for. Now, I have written a few down so I don't forget them. The first one's going to sound crazy that you'd even have to ask this, but asking them if they drive. Some photographers don't drive, which I don't know how they do it. Kudos to them, and it's not bad if everything's in one venue, but when you've got multiple locations and they've got to leave early for an Uber, it's going to miss moments. The other thing is backup equipment. Now, this doesn't need much of an explanation, but you don't want a photographer who's going to turn up with just one camera on the day. My cameras, as well as having 2 or 3 of them, have also got dual memory card slots. So this year I've had a camera fail on me as the bride walked down the aisle. Wasn't a problem, just whipped out the other camera. And I also had a memory card fail on me. Wasn't a problem. My cameras have dual memory cards. These are the things that you need to ask for. Because technology fails, and it will fail, it's just a case of when. And you don't want it to fail at the worst possible time. And this is where backup equipment is so important, especially when you're paying less, so your budget photographers, especially students, may not even be able to afford a second camera. You need to decide if you're happy to take that risk. The other thing I've written down is asking them what time they stay till. Typically, if photographers stay till your first dance, I stay a little bit after, but also stay as long as you need me. For free, that's what I do, but not everyone does that. So some photographers, if you're doing sparkles at 9 PM, will say, oh, that's going to be an extra £200 if you want me to stay that long. Just check that, because if it's important to you that you kind of do get them shots, you don't want to be surprised with extra bills and stuff just for the sake of a sparkler shot that I'm sure many photographers out there would stay anyway. A lot of photographers are lovely enough that they will just hang about until you need them, but there are some unfortunately that will charge you. And I understand why, you know, it's their time, but you don't want to be getting a £200 bill just for the sake of some sparklers. Asking them what time they arrive as well, so you want to make sure that they're arriving 2 or 3 hours before they're due to leave for the ceremony if you've got bridal prep. That's usually enough time to get everything. Photographers, I don't know why, some people say to me the makeup artist is arriving at 6 a.m. What time are you arriving? Now, there's no point in a photographer being there that early. They're just going to be stood around in your way all morning. So 2 to 3 hours before is probably a good time. The other thing to ask for is how many weddings they do each year. Now, this is where budget photographers may have to do more weddings to keep it sustainable. So they may have to do 100, 150 weddings a year at £700 just to kind of keep the business afloat. And this is kind of where spending more benefits you, because you don't want a photographer turning up who's absolutely knackered on your day, especially in summer, because that's when they're busiest. A budget photographer may be doing 4 or 5 weddings that week, which is a lot. On top of that, it means that they've got a lot of editing, your photos take longer, things get a bit rushed. So just kind of get an idea of how busy they are. It's not bad that they're busy, but you don't want them so busy that they're turning up falling asleep at your wedding. The other thing I've written down is how long your photos take. Now, I do photos 2 to 3 weeks, some do 3 or 4 weeks, some of them take a year. Now, if you love the photographer and you're happy to wait a year, that's fine. Just make sure that you do know kind of what you're going to be hit with after the wedding. Asking them if sneak peeks are available. Most photographers will do sneak peeks the next day. It's usually 20, 30 photos, just so at least you've posted something and you've seen something. Other things to check. Now, this seems obvious, checking for reviews. Also monitoring the reviews as well, because if you book a photographer for 2 years, they may have been good when you book them, but over time they may decide that they can't be bothered anymore, and so effort lacks, and then people start complaining, and the reviews were kind of appearing after you booked them, so you never saw them. So as well as checking for reviews, check that no bad ones start to appear as well, and keeping an eye on all the groups as well, because when there's a bad photographer out there, they are kind of named and shamed very quickly. But also if they've got no reviews at all on Google or Facebook, then that's kind of a red flag. It probably means they're hiding something. Check socials. Now, I like to keep my socials up to date, and I'm forever adding new content, more so that I can get my couples excited for their wedding and it's getting closer to their day. But if you find a photographer and then you kind of look and see that they've not posted anything for a year, it's potentially a sign of, I don't want to say it, maybe they can't be bothered anymore. They're not taking it as serious, it's just a job then. You kind of want to make sure that they're still passionate about what they're doing. And so keeping socials up to date for me is really important. I post most of my weddings on there, so couples get excited and kind of see I'm still active as well. Now, I'm not saying that if they're not posting on social media that they're rubbish. It just may mean that they're not kind of bothered about social media anymore because they may be busy anyway. But I just think it's a good reassurance for couples to make sure that they feel happy. Now, checking the website for finer details I've wrote down as well. Now, what does this mean? Just check that they're actually updating their website from time to time. There's a couple of photographers I've seen say something like, book now for 2022, 2023 pricing, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, have they not updated their website in 3 years? Is that not just a sign that they've kind of given up and whatever comes their way they'll take? So just check that they're actually, things like that are appearing on the website. So the next thing you probably want to ask for is to see a sample gallery. Now, 75% of couples don't ask me for one, but I send them it anyway, because for me, I want to make sure that their expectations are met, so that they've actually got a good idea of what the photos will look like. I don't want to mislead people. And the photographers will put the best work on the website. I mean, why wouldn't you? But it's really important that you go and dig a little deeper and just see an example gallery, particularly of your venue if they've been before. It'll just give you a full insight into how your pictures will look. Now, I've seen photographers charging £2,000-3,000, but when you look at the actual sample galleries, so I say sample gallery, I mean like a real wedding there. It's quite disappointing for the mismatch for what they've advertised versus what they've delivered. Now, this will tell you everything you need to know, but kind of look at how many pictures they are, what state the pictures are in. If you notice pictures are really bad, then that tells you everything you need to know. But yeah, this is one thing a lot of people don't ask of me, and I wish they would. Just make sure your expectations are met with this. So one of the other things as well is when you contact a photographer the first time, you want to see how fast they respond to you. Now, if they take more than a couple of days to respond to you, to me, that's kind of a no-no. Really, you want to be getting photographers that jump at the chance to do your wedding, respond within a couple of hours. But it also sets the precedence. If they're going to take a couple of days to get back to you before you've even booked, what are they going to be like down the line when you need to ask a question? Or after the wedding, if you've got a problem or you want to chase your pictures, you want someone that from the start is giving you quick response times. The other thing as well I want to mention is awards. Now, you're going to see awards all over photographers' website. All I'll say is don't take them with a pinch of salt, because there's that many bodies out there that give out awards. It's not difficult for there to be 50 wedding photographers of the year out there. I'm not saying that they're bad, but the problem with these award systems is that they don't judge the photographers on the pictures. It's often just based on what people have said about them. As well as this as well, you're going to go around to wedding fairs and you're probably going to meet suppliers. Now, it's fine. Just don't book them there and then, and don't be pressured into any tactics of 20% off if you book now and now today. Because the problem is when you're at a wedding fair, you don't have access to your phone as much. You can't research stuff. So if you find a photographer, great, go home, do your research, then get in touch with them. Do not book a wedding photographer there and then. It's very easy to just hastily jump into something before you've really done your research. As well as this, I'd recommend that you speak to a couple as well. So I'd say at least 2 on a phone call or a Zoom, and then pick the one that you like the best. Just because it gives you an idea of, you may have a call with one and think they're fantastic. Then you may have a call with another one and think, wow, they're even better. The other thing you're going to get as well is when you go to venues, they will often give you a list of recommended suppliers. Now, I'm not saying recommended suppliers are bad. They're on the list for a reason. But photography and videography in particular, they're very artistic and individual. And you may end up booking someone just because they're recommended, and you may do less digging on the person or looking into the style. So if you want to book a recommended, that's fine, but treat them just as like any other. Do your research, do your digging, and don't book someone just because you love the photos. Personality is 50% of kind of what should make you decide which photographer's for you. The other 50% is obviously the photos. I've had people before contact me, say, we love your photos, we want to book you. And I'm like, I'd really love to speak to you on the phone. And they're like, no, it's fine, we'll book you. And I'm like, no, I really want to speak to you on the phone. Hopefully this has helped you learn a bit more about what happens for wedding photographers and what to look for. The one thing I will finalise and say is budget is such a big thing. Don't go spending too little on something that's so important to you. Sadly, I do see people on groups afterwards saying, the photographer missed the group shot, he missed this, he missed that, he missed that. How much did you pay for them? £400, it was the first wedding. It's like, well, this is what you expect. So there is an element that you pay for what you get, and I think a good middle ground is probably $1,200 to $2,000. That's a good middle ground. If you're spending more, that's fine. Just check their galleries and check the work and check they're not full of style shoots. If you're spending a little because it's all you can afford, and that's understandable, just do your homework, back up cameras, do the drive, look at some sample galleries, and check for really bad colour manipulation on the photos, just so that it makes sure that your photos do look like your day. Just don't expect the world from someone that's budget. You need to appreciate that you are spending little. Now, if you're spending less than $700, they're probably working for minimum wage in the grand scheme of things. So just bear that in mind. The best thing I can offer, or best bit of advice I can offer you, is just to type the photographer's name that you're potentially going to book into Facebook and see if anything comes up. Now, there are a few notoriously bad companies out there, and if you type their name in, you'll see so much, and that's kind of you doing your due diligence. But also remember, once you've booked your photographer, due diligence doesn't stop. You need to keep monitoring the reviews, social media, check the still act. So just do your due diligence, keep checking things, do check your galleries, check for reviews, and you'll be fine, I promise. Just make sure that your expectations match what you're spending. That's one thing I will say. I hope this video has been useful. If you've got any questions, just leave them in the comments. Thank you.